Hello and welcome to today's session about overcoming imposter syndrome and how to break free from the fear, the doubt, the crippling, sometimes lack of confidence in being able to move forward that I know from my own experience can be just debilitating. So let's get stuck in. Before we get started, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about me. So I'm Kim Adele. I'm co-founder of International Imposter Syndrome Awareness Day. I'm a certified learning and performance professional, and I'm a long-term sufferer of imposter syndrome. It seems like no matter how many accolades, how many awards, how many people tell you that you're good at something, sometimes our ability to doubt it in ourselves, our belief that actually if only they knew that we're somehow a fraud, can be just so difficult to live with. And that's really what we're trying to talk to you about today. So I'd like to start by saying good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are listening and watching. I hope that you're going to find the next few minutes helpful and give you some strategies for those moments of doubt, and also give you some comfort and some confidence that you're not alone, that many of us have felt like this. So I'd like to thank you for joining me today as we embark on our journey to explore the phenomenon that affects us, that is imposter syndrome. So let's start by, what is it? So imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern where individuals doubt their accomplishments and fear being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of their competence, a nagging feeling that you're not capable or as capable as others perceive you to be, and that you'll be found out sooner or later. It was originally identified in the late 1970s, and it was identified originally as a female-only phenomenon. But research subsequently has shown that actually this is gender agnostic. It doesn't matter our age, our race, our gender, our culture. Imposter syndrome can impact us at any time. And in fact, research shows that over 70% of us will suffer from feelings of imposter syndrome at some point in our life. So let's delve deeper into the roots of this fear, the fear within, as it were. Imposter syndrome often stems from various sources, such as perfectionism, unrealistic expectations, comparisons, a lack of self-confidence. It thrives in environments where success is measured by external validation rather than personal fulfillment. And very often, particularly in our current environment, in our current society, we do live in a despair and compare society. We compare ourselves to the seemingly perfect lives of others and despair at our own messy reality. And it can leave us feeling very inadequate, very behind where we're supposed to be. And that just adds to that doubt that anything we have achieved really should be ours. So let's work through a little bit of the definition and history. So as we've said, imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon characterized by persistent feelings of inadequacy despite evidence of success. Imposter syndrome was first conceptualized by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in the 1970s. It was 1978 to be exact. And originally, as we've said, it was identified as female only, although research now shows that actually this impacts all of us, or can impact all of us at any point, anywhere. And here are just some of the types of imposter syndrome. You can get the self-diminisher, the person who stays under the radar, that tries not to be found out, that wants to ensure no one's really looking at them. I was definitely in that camp. I remember somebody introducing me once at a training session as the person who'd made self-diminishing a life form, which was quite harsh feedback at the time. Then we've got the procrastinator. They'll delay things to avoid a bad outcome. You've got the people pleaser, that they're safe as long as others like me. I definitely fell into that camp as well. And you sometimes lose yourself because you're so busy trying to be what everybody else needs you to be. You forget to be what you need you to be. Overworked, so over preparation, long hours, always on. And the perfectionist, the wanting to produce 100% perfect outcome and only looking at the areas that went wrong. So never seeing the things that went well, only ever concentrating on the things that went badly. I think at some point I've had all of these, occasionally all at the same time. And it can be just so tiring. And the other thing is, you absolutely believe you're the only person that's going through it. And you can't talk about it, because talking about it would mean actually owning up to the fact that you feel like an imposter. And then you'll definitely be found out to be a fraud. So we don't talk about it. And that's one of the things we're trying to change, because talking about it really can help you to overcome those feelings of self-doubt and get better validation. So what are some common signs and symptoms? Self-doubt. So people experiencing imposter syndrome often doubt their abilities and their accomplishments, often attributing their success to luck rather than ability. You've got perfectionism, individuals setting excessively high standards for themselves and fearing failure. You've got the overworking. Individuals with imposter syndrome may engage in overworking, over-preparing to compensate for their perceived inadequacies. They have a fear of being evaluated. And being evaluated gives them another opportunity to be exposed as a fraud. And that results in anxiety when associated with evaluations or feedback from others. They fear that it's going to tell them what they already fear to be true, when very often it tells them the exact opposite. And discounting success. Individuals with imposter syndrome may downplay or diminish their achievements, attributing them to luck or external validation, or even down to some other contributing factor. I remember once assuming I'd been given an award because they'd got a point to make to other people. How ridiculous was that? But at the time, I genuinely believed it to be true. And that's what imposter syndrome can do to us. It can make us believe the ridiculous. But the first thing about imposter syndrome that really helped me was when I realized I wasn't alone, that actually other people suffer from it. And even some of the most successful individuals have grappled with imposter syndrome. One for me that really surprised me was Albert Einstein had suffered from imposter syndrome, someone globally recognized as a genius. And I think he has a quote that says something along the lines of, "The esteem within which my works are held leave me feeling like an unlikely swindler." So even somebody like him, and you've got Maya Angelou, who shared that she'd written 11 books, but each time she thought, they're going to find out I've run a game on everyone. They're going to find me out. I'm not good enough for this. And yet again, somebody recognized globally for the impact that she's had. You've got Tom Hanks, who is always so brilliant at bringing characters to life, as making us believe in them. And he said, no matter what you've done, there comes a point when you think, how did I get here? Where they're going to discover that I'm in fact a fraud and take everything away from me. We've got Michelle Obama, who said she still sometimes feels like a fraud. It doesn't go away, that feeling that you shouldn't take me that seriously. And I think that's the thing with imposter syndrome. I don't think it does ever go away. You know, we've talked about today's session being overcoming it. For me, overcoming it is learning those strategies to be able to catch it in those moments where it's taking over and get yourself back in control. Just a few more people that have suffered with it. Emma Watson, who said, it's almost like the better I do, the more my feelings of inadequacy actually increase, because I'm going, any moment someone's going to find out I'm a total fraud and that I don't deserve any of what I've achieved. That's so common with the people that I've spoke to over the last 6 years researching imposter syndrome, why we do it, what it does to us. You've got Neil Gaiman, who's had the first problem of any kind of even limited success is the unshakable conviction that you're getting away with something, and that any moment now they'll discover you. And this for me really leads to an important point. We talk about imposter syndrome, and imposter is fraud, and fraud, as we know, is wrong. And that further adds to those feelings that this is wrong, that we shouldn't be doing this, that we're going to get in so much trouble. And people are going to be so disappointed in us that actually that feeds that underlying imposter syndrome. Their words remind us that imposter syndrome can affect anyone regardless of achievements, but hopefully inspires us to push through our doubts and embrace our capabilities. I personally believe instead of it being imposter syndrome, it's actually the symptoms of being an insecure overachiever, because you only start to develop these concerns, these fears, when you've achieved something. As Neil said, even limited success can drive us to that belief that any moment it's going to get taken away and that we didn't really earn it. So how do we break free? Breaking free from the clutches of imposter syndrome isn't easy, but it is possible. As I said earlier, it isn't about overcoming it and never facing it again, because you never know when you're going to come up against another situation, get another accolade, another award, be offered another opportunity that's going to get those old feelings of imposter syndrome coming back. But it's about learning some strategies to cope and recover in those moments. The first one is to acknowledge your feelings. Recognize when you're experiencing imposter syndrome. Sometimes simply acknowledging its presence can lessen its power over you. For me, one of the things I do, and it drops into both acknowledging your feelings and then reframing your thoughts, is taking myself through a 3-step process. So the first is I have to acknowledge that actually I am feeling out of my depth. I'm feeling like a fraud. I'm feeling like I could get this wrong. And very often that involves my subconscious brain, which is my happy little helper, running back into the library of my brain and finding all of those times, all of those examples where I messed up, where I got it wrong, where I did something that didn't go as well as expected. But the next thing I need to do is start reframing my thinking. So challenging that self-talk, and instead of dwelling on every time I got it wrong, focusing on my strengths and my past achievements. So I ask myself, okay, I can get it wrong, but have there been any examples where I got this right? And that subconscious brain, that happy little helper, runs straight back in there and finds all the times where you got it right, where you were awarded something, where people said thank you, where people came back to you years later to let you know about the positive impact you'd had. And therefore, I can now look at it and go, okay, I can get this wrong. Absolutely, I can. But I can also get it right. So what am I going to focus on? The fear that I will get it wrong, or the hope that I'll get it right? Because both of those are created in the same brain. They're both equally credible. And so I choose to focus on the fact that I'm capable. I have what it takes. I'm going to try. Because if I don't try, then I've definitely failed. And the other thing I do is borrow people's belief. The one thing for me that was a massive breakthrough was that moment when I realized that I was inadvertently making my opinion that I wasn't very good and that I was a fraud and that nobody should give me any credibility. I was making that more credible, more believable, more justifiable than the feedback and the belief from people that I admired and aspired to be like. Because these people were giving me opportunities, they were giving me awards, they were giving me accolades and recognition. And every time I was dismissing it as if only they knew, instead of looking at it and going, I value their opinion more than I value mine. So why don't I just borrow their belief in me and do my very best not to let them down? And for me, I often will hold on to that. I will often borrow somebody's belief to just give me the extra boost I need to get through whatever challenge that I'm facing. I also had to learn to embrace imperfection. I'd spent years trying to be a perfectionist and failing dismally, because as human beings, we are perfectly imperfect. In fact, it's our imperfection that is our perfection. But I didn't understand that. Once I understood that perfection is unattainable and it's exhausting, it allowed me to be able to look at what can I learn from that imperfection? So instead of seeing the mistake as being the thing that defines me, I realized that it isn't the mistake, it's what I do with it. It's being able to embrace my flaws and embrace my mistakes as opportunities to grow, to learn, to develop, to do something else. Because I am, as we all are, a work in progress. And every day gives us another opportunity to do something a little bit different. Like I say with my little girl, everything comes down to choice. We made a choice and it might not have resulted the way we wanted to, but the beauty of choices is the minute we've made one, we can immediately make a different one. And I think that's the same as I've been going through imposter syndrome. It's that part that says, yes, I can be mean to myself. And I've spoken to myself in ways that I would never speak to another human being. But I can also choose to speak to myself more kindly. Another key point for me was seeking support, surrounding yourself with a supportive network of friends, families, mentors, colleagues who believe in you, sharing your feelings with them so you realize you're not alone in this struggle. And one for me that I highly recommend is get yourself a Thrive Hive. those 4 or 5 people that you can call on in those moments of self-doubt, who you trust, who you know have got your back, who have got your best interests at heart. That'll include the critical best friend, the person who'll tell you your bum looks big in it before you go out, not when you've been out 3 hours thinking you look great, but also the person that will just sit with you in silence whilst you gather your own strength and your own thoughts. For me, I've got somebody in there that's going to give me the kick up the pants that I often need, but I've also got someone in there that'll sugar the pill for those moments where I'm not really ready yet for that tough love. But for surrounding yourself with that hive of people that are going to be there to support you is an amazing resource. And I'm hugely privileged to also be part of a number of other people's Thrive Hive. So it really does help you build that network, community and support. And the other one is to set realistic goals, to break down your goals into smaller achievable tasks, and then celebrate each milestone along the way. One of the things I used to be really guilty of is once I achieved one of the milestones, I got through it, I didn't spend any time going, oh, that was good. I would just like, but I'm still not at the finish line. I'm still not at the finish line. I've still got to go further. And I had someone I was coaching who really struggled with this setting realistic goals. They'd set such big goals that actually when they come back like, oh, I haven't achieved it. And you'd be like, okay, but it's only been 2 weeks. Did you really think that you could achieve that in 2 weeks? And they were like, well, no, obviously it was going to take longer. So you've got to break it down so that you can hold yourself to account about whether or not you have done enough where you expected to be. Was that plausible? Was it likely? And then celebrate that rather than set the goal so large that all you're ever going to do is find yourself feeling unworthy. So when we've embraced imperfection, we've sought support, we've set realistic goals, we need to practice self-compassion. Treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that you'd offer a friend. Be gentle with yourself during moments of self-doubt and failure. Allow yourself to be your own best friend instead of your own inner critic. I know for me, I talk to myself in ways that I would never talk to other people. A great example was just before I did my TEDx a few years ago, and somebody came and gave me some feedback afterwards. They said, it was fascinating, we watched you, and before everybody else's performance, you helped them with their hair, with their makeup, you gave them a great pep talk about what an amazing talk they were going to give, and how they were going to be so brilliant at it, and you were really, really supportive. And then they watched what I did to myself before I went on. And I looked at myself in the reflection of the glass door in the corridor outside and said, just get over yourself. It's 12 minutes and no one's going to die. And the difference in how I would talk to myself versus how I would talk to others was a real moment for me that was like, actually, I need to look at myself and say, what if this were my best friend, if this were my daughter, if this was somebody I loved, in this situation, saying this now, what would I say to them? And now I do my best to say that to myself, to catch myself when I'm being mean and go, no, that's not very kind. I wouldn't say that to anybody else. And that's not what I'm going to say to myself either. And although it is definitely a work in progress, it really does help me get present to the moment. And finally, I guess for me, the ultimate breakthrough for me was embracing my authenticity. It's one of the reasons that I branded my company, or rebranded my company to be more precise, as Authentic Achievements, because I finally decided that I needed to embrace being me, warts and all, and that as long as my intentions were honourable and as long as I took accountability and kept learning, that actually being me was okay. Yes, I've got flaws, but I've also got strengths, and I've got a drive to develop my flaws, to find ways to improve them, to be a better version of myself today than I was yesterday. That's been my new goal for 5.5 years. And I'm still a work in progress, but I'm grateful to say that every day I am a better person than I was the day before. And that's the best I can hope for, as long as I keep going and keep looking at the fact that we've got to get that validation from within, because no amount of external validation is going to help unless you can do the introspective, looking at yourself and saying, what are the bits in here that I like? What are the things that I'm proud of? As well as what are the things that I don't like and I'd like to change? But unless we start to look at ourselves in balance, life becomes a really challenging place to be. So as we come to the end now of our discussion, I wanted to leave you with this thought that you're not an imposter, that you're worthy, you're capable, that you deserve to be here, that you should embrace your uniqueness and let your authentic self shine. And I'd like to thank you for giving me your time, for spending these moments with you. And I hope that you found this helpful. If there's anything else I can do to help and support, please do get in touch. Drop something down in the comments. And also don't forget to head over to our website, IISAD.org, where there's a whole range of free resources, guides to resilience, to self-compassion, and to self-care to help you. I hope this has been useful. Thank you for staying with me.